Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zatlin. How's it going, man?
Ben, it's a new year, new me. I'm sure everyone would rally around that. But no, it's also a new year for the Steelers. They were 2-6, and they're now 8-8, ready to go into the last week of the season and potentially keep Mike Tomlin's winning streak alive. It's the greatest coaching job I've ever seen, outside of maybe Mike Smith this past fall. So, yeah, like I said, new year, new me. Probably not true, but I hope your holidays and your time off was enjoyable.
It was lovely. Yeah, I appreciate Scotty filling in for me last week. I got to spend some time with my family in Nashville. Got to see my son experience his first Christmas. So yeah, it was great all around, and really enjoyed a little bit of time off.
What did he get for Christmas though?
Oh
What did
my gosh,
Santa get him?
what did he not get? He got like a few different like horses to kind of ride, or like a plastic one that he could kind of like scoot on.
Yeah.
He got some like drums. We just been unpacking. We got some blocks. We got everything. His toy collection has gone up a completely different level after Christmas.
Well, while your son is getting a handful of great items, we're only getting +1 review from last week. Did you see that transition? Great transition from me.
Perfect.
And +1 on Spotify. We're actually doing pretty well on Spotify. We're
Hmm.
rallying pretty well. Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, excuse me. Gotta rally here. We just gotta. But no problem. We've got good content today. Some really exciting stuff just in terms of transfer news. And Ben, are you ready to get into it?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about what everybody got for Christmas. I think there's going to be some schools trying to finish out their wish list with some transfers this winter. And first up, one of the biggest names, I think, to hit the transfer portal that we've seen in a while, Dillon Powell of Colorado School of Mines on the transfer portal, has 2 seasons of cross country, will potentially have anywhere from 2 to 3 indoor seasons and 1 to 2 outdoor seasons, depending on what he does this spring semester. He's coming off a dominant victory at the NCAA D2 cross country nationals. He's run 13:33 in the 5K, 28:22 in the 10K. He is an absolute stud that would make any team that he goes to better. So Garrett, we talked about this before we started. What are the schools that you see him going to? Because this is a guy that will change the fortunes of any team he goes to.
Yeah, I think people are really undervaluing what this guy could bring to the table because he's probably at a better fitness than he was last year. And if that means his times are going to get even faster, you're looking at a really scary name. I'm going to start with my first name. Then you'll give yours. We'll go
Yep.
back and forth and alternate a little bit. This guy, and by the way, he's expected to transfer as a graduate student next fall. So just clarity there.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy screams Colorado Buffalo. He does, and I know you were going to have that too. I mean, he's from Colorado School of Mines. He works incredibly well at altitude. The University of Colorado or CU, I don't know. Is it Colorado University or University of Colorado?
I think it's CU, so Colorado University.
Well, I'll
I
figure
don't
that
know.
out
Who
later.
knows?
Who knows? And but they've recently been very active in terms of bringing on grad
Mm-hmm.
transfers. You look at last year's lineup: Brendan Fraser, Seth Hirsch, Andrew Kent. Oh my gosh, who are a few of the other names that I'm just completely missing? But there's a handful of names who are graduate transfers. A lot of those guys are leaving. They
Yep.
kind of need a new low stick. Dillon Powell could be that guy.
Yeah, a lot of seniors in that lineup, at least according to Tifers. I wouldn't be surprised. Austin Vansel, I think, might have another year.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're going to lose a lot of firepower. Colorado was my number 1 team as well. I mean, it seems too easy. Like the Colorado connection, the need that the Buffaloes have. I mean, he could come in and be potentially number 1, number 2 runner for a team that is probably has aspirations of being in top 10 again next year. So I think it would be a hand in glove fit for both sides. But I mean, this is also a Colorado team that isn't quite at its elite level like it's been in years past. He could potentially want to go somewhere where he has a chance of being on the podium as a team.
Right. And I completely agree with you there. That's why the other team I was going to suggest is Oklahoma State. Um, and did you have them at all?
I did not. No, but
Okay.
I like that.
So lose Rodriguez, they lose Shea Foster,
Hmm.
they have the scholarship money. They're great in the longer distances. I mean, they've got guys coming back. They're a really deep squad. Obviously, I mean, literally barely missed out on the national title this past fall. I think they could go after him. I think Powell is like exactly what they need. Cross country superstar, still a lot of ceiling, and they could potentially win a national title in 2023. So, and not only that, but Oklahoma State also has a history of going after grad students. So I like Oklahoma State.
I like that. And I think he would be perfect, and they would be, I think, national contenders still because Shea Foster didn't give them anything this year. Asai Rodriguez was great, but they have pieces behind that can fill in, and then Powell would round out that top five really, really well. And all of a sudden, yeah, you're looking at a team that is just as competitive for a national title as they were this year.
Um, I'm almost gonna like try to predict one of your teams here. Did you have Northern Arizona at all?
I did, yes.
Okay, tell me why.
So altitude, I think, is something that obviously he trains well at it. This would be a step up going to Flagstaff, and I think if you're Powell, I obviously you want to be around guys that are going to push you, who are better than you, and there's no better place to do that really than NAU, where you're going to be training with guys like Nico Young, Drew Bosley, and if you're NAU, like we saw, they're clearly vulnerable. I think they're going to be losing George Cush and Ryan Raff, like guys that have been big contributors, especially Cush in the last 2 years. And the reason why they won the national title was his All American performance. They need someone to come in and kind of solidify and give them a little bit more margin of error to win the title next year. And I think in a lot of ways, it's a perfect fit. I think Powell gets everything that he would want. And I think NAU remains the title favorite for next year with him in their lineup.
So I thought about NAU, but then I ultimately picked against that, and here's why. I agree. Like the altitude, the acclaim, the distance centric focus of the program would be perfect for him. But George Kusha, I think, is the only guy
Hmm.
that's leaving from that lineup. He's the only guy I can remember in our time of covering that he's really only been a graduate transfer.
Right.
I question, and I simply just don't know this. I truly don't know. I don't know if NAU will have like the roster or scholarship space that maybe Pal's going to need or want. So again, I don't know. Maybe they do. Maybe they're like, we can give it to him, and yeah, they'll be fine. Um, but it's just that's why I'm like, I don't know if in that context, it's maybe the best spot, right? And maybe it is. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but that's why I didn't have them.
Yeah, and I get that, and I mean they have so much money tied up in a few different individuals. I'm sure that it is going to be hard for them to go out and get somebody. But I mean, if he can slot into that Kush spot, and they do the same thing that they did with him, where they snagged him as a ready-made fit for the lineup, then I think it makes a lot of sense. But who knows? They might be looking for someone with a little bit more eligibility.
Um, I will say this, and I actually think Powell has quite a good bit of
He
eligibility
does,
given
yeah.
given that he's a graduate student. So I think he, from that perspective, is good. It also depends if Nico Young actually ends up like going pro
Hmm.
this summer. Maybe that opens up, and they're like, okay, this is a Dillon Powell shaped hole
They
here.
need Powell if Nico Young goes pro.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. All right, who is your third team, your final team?
So this one's a little bit more out of the box. I've been thinking about this as we've been talking. I'm going to go in North Carolina. A little
Oh,
different than some of the other teams that we've talked about. Not at altitude on the East Coast. This would be a big departure for Powell and everything that he's known. But if you're gonna make that big of a move, I think North Carolina is the perfect spot. He slides in with some other guys that have 2 years of eligibility left, like Parker Wolf and Patrick Anderson, Ethan Strand, a bunch of guys who are he's going to be able to grow with, and by everybody's final year of eligibility, this could very well be, if not a podium contender, a national title contender.
he would make things really interesting. Maybe not even in 2023, but maybe come
Exactly.
2024,
Yeah.
that gets unbelievably scary. And if they land him, North Carolina would probably be the last team I would ever want to go after. Milt has not been reluctant to go after grad transfers. They obviously just landed Alex Phillip, kind of fills out their lineup a good bit. There's still so many guys that could get better. I thought of UNC. I just didn't think if it was like a Dillon Powell fit, just because, like you said, it ventures so far away from the ethos. Is that the right word of what
Hmm.
Colorado is? Um, but I like it. I mean, like if I'm UNC, I am putting all of my money into trying to get Powell. I mean, I'm doing everything. Um, so I don't disagree with that. I think that's actually pretty decent. Um, I have a somewhat sort of similar pick, but it's not UNC. It's Tennessee. I think Tennessee is a sneaky good fit. Carlson, as we all know, will go after any and every grad transfer, which we'll talk about in a moment. They just lost Dylan Jacobs. He still have Yassine Abdallah. They've got a couple promising guys like still working their way up. Um, and it's like the start of something new and exciting. And I think Carlson will go after Powell pretty hard, and I think Powell would at least entertain it because of just what Carlson's been able to do.
Yeah, and I think that is similar to North Carolina. I just think that UNC's a few years further along in the process.
And they
So
are, yeah.
you can see where it's like Powell can be like, all right, by the time I'm in my last year of eligibility, this could be a extremely good team. Whereas Tennessee, I think that's harder to see 2 years from now. And Carlson has proven that he can kind of hit like hit fast forward in a lot of ways and push through a lot quicker than you expect to relevancy. But I still think they're just 2 or 3 years away, and that's just a product of Miltonberg being there a little bit longer than Carlson.
Yeah, and I don't totally disagree with that. I think, if you had to force me to choose, I'd say UNC would probably go after him more heavily, if they can. But I also just like it just every time, like Carlson will always surprise us. Like it wasn't a surprise when Dylan Jacobs went, right? Like everyone and their mother knew Dylan Jacobs
Hmm.
was going to go there. But like then he gets Yassine Abdallah, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, and then it changes that dynamic. And like there's just a couple names like that where you're like, they landed this guy and they landed this guy. They need more true firepower. They have a lot of really solid support pieces, including guys who we'll talk about now or soon at least. I just don't know. Like I think Tennessee kind of needs that secondary low stick and next to Abdallah like they had this year. And I think that's why it would be so important to go after Powell, just because they usually do. So
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It's interesting that neither of us said Oregon, which is another place that I think
yeah,
we both expected with Schumacher going there. Obviously, with the newest addition to the staff, Chris Zielinski, like that could be somebody that they could really kickstart their program with and really accelerate the timeline a little bit. Do you think that's just not quite as good of a fit, or I mean, I'm not really sure why I didn't pick them, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think part of it is it's not the same proximity as Colorado. Like there's
Right.
not that same altitude Colorado ethos there. It's not the same podium contender yet that Oklahoma State and Northern Arizona are. And I don't know if you had to choose between which team has a brighter future for the next 2 years. I'd say right now it'd be UNC.
Yes.
I don't know if, what we'll say that after next year, but for now it's UNC. Um, but I don't think it's wrong. Like I think Oregon will probably go after them if they can get them, and I'm sure they probably will try. It's just I'm still don't know what their identity is yet. Like, are they a distance first team? Or are they going to continue to attack the mile like they did with Ben Thomas when he was there? It I just don't know exactly. I haven't seen enough after one cross country season to truly know what's going to be the direction of this team and where are they going to go. But they went after a guy exactly like Powell and Aaron Bienenfeld,
Yep.
a year or two ago, so it would be a good fit. Real quick, why did none of us say Stanford?
They were a name that I had written down as a possibility, and I think there it makes a lot of sense. I do wonder how urgent they would be pushing for him, and also considering the amount of money that they have tied up in the young brothers alone coming in, I wonder how much money they have to be able to go get him.
That's my thing. And it's just like I don't know if there's even going to be money or scholarships or room for Powell. Um,
But he would make them like
I mean,
just unstoppable.
yeah, until they get to the national meet. Like it's just but no, and you're right. They would be
But that's the
they would
thing.
be
They would have 7 guys who could very well be top 40 guys. Like they would be
yeah.
almost like Stanford proof in a lot of ways.
And here's the thing: it's really hard to know because if Kai Robinson goes pro or Charles Hicks after this year, is Powell still going to be around for Stanford to get?
Probably not.
Yeah, I don't think
Like
so
he's
either.
going to get a full court recruiting like press like for the next month or two, and like I'm sure that'll delay his decision a little while, but there's no way he goes into March without making a decision in my mind.
I could see him going to March. I wonder if by June though. Like I'd say like June. You know, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't really have a good idea, but could get really interesting.
At the
Really
very
interesting.
least, I would be stunned if it was after April 1st when like all the recruiting has been decided and all the money's basically been allocated at that point.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if some schools will be like, "Hey, we just don't know what our roster is going to look like after the
Right.
summer. Like, just hang tight." And I don't know if
Yeah.
he would do that, but who knows? So,
No,
all right.
when you're a guy that good, you get to dictate your own terms.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Usually,
all right, let's talk about some of the other transfer news that we saw in the past few weeks. First off, 2 names going to Tennessee. Obsaa Feda from Miami, Ohio, headed to Knoxville along with Brandon Olden of Siena. Both bring in pretty solid accolades. Feda 14-18 5K, 29-39 in the 10K, 8:58 in the steeple, just coming off a 21st place finish at the Great Lakes Regional. As for Olden, he's run 13:45 in the 5K, 8 flat in the 3K, and coming off a 28th place finish at the Northeast Regional. 2 guys that on paper look solid and I think are good additions, but I think once they get to Knoxville are only going to look better and much more valuable after Carlson's got his hands on them.
yeah. I think these are solid pickups, and I think they were necessary pickups. Um, they still have some upside, and I agree. I think they'll be better in Knoxville with Carlson kind of leading their direction there. Um, they need more of a low stick though. Like Olden's great, Feda, sorry, don't know how to say that, is great, and they could be like 3, 4, 5 guys on this
Hmm.
Tennessee roster. But it's like, how much of that can we replace with can replace Dylan Jacobs? And I don't know if they're going to replace Dylan Jacobs unless they land Dillon Powell. Um, so it's hard to say. Um, but I still like it. It stabilizes their lineup a bit more, gives them a few more options, especially with Thiessen also gone on that back end. Um, but I'm still not entirely sure, just because you look at some of their like cross country resume, like you know with Feda, it's not that he had a poor cross country season. He actually ran really well, but the meets that he went to, like he didn't go to Cowboy Jamboree or Nutty Comb or pre national, like or any of those meets, right? And so it was really hard to kind of know exactly how good he was during that season. 21st in the Great Lakes is pretty solid. And it's kind of a similar story for Brandon Olden because the only big meet that he went to this past fall was Paul Short, and he settled for 47th place. So I'm still not entirely sure what to expect from these guys.
I think my upside on them is just seeing what Tennessee's done with like Jacob Lewis and Eli Nahom, where they come in and there isn't a whole lot of expectations, and then they didn't have a great national meet, but they both showed a lot of signs throughout the regular season that they could be very key contributors. And in my mind, these two guys come in with a little bit more accolades in terms of their track times, and I think that if they can improve the same way that Lewis and Nahom did, then they could be, like you said, really solid 3, 4, 5 pieces that at least give Tennessee a very high floor going into next year.
All right, so Jacobs is gone. How about this? Abdallah returns, Nahom returns, Lewis returns, Buckholz returns, Kenan Anderson returns, and it looks like Nate Kowalik returns, all based on Tiefers, right? This is all based on Tiefers. Where in that lineup, with that top 7, do you see these guys fitting in?
I think you put Feda in probably third, and I think Olden fourth.
Yeah, I'd say that's about right.
I think
I think so.
Abdallah is the clear one. I think you could see. I mean, Nahom was really good at times last year. You
Yeah,
could see
he
him
was.
being second. And then I think those two guys would be third and fourth.
If Tennessee didn't add any more guys, and I'm pretty confident that they eventually will, just
Right.
knowing what that program and Carlson will do. But let's just say that they don't add any more guys. Just by feel, where are you ranking this team going into this summer?
I think they're somewhere in the 23 to 25 or like the just missed. I think they're a top 30 team, and if we did top 30 rankings, I think they would be in there, but I don't know if they're necessarily top 25.
I'd keep them in the top 25. But I agree, it would be like right on the fringes. I still don't believe that that's all
Right.
they'll do. I'm sure they'll make a move. Um, but yeah, we'll see what happens. So, okay, we've got a couple more names that we just want to potentially go over and glance. I know this is kind of one of the shorter pods that we've had today, but there's only so much to talk about before the action starts again. Um, Abigail Pradere, sure. She's going from San Francisco to Oregon State. Oakley Olson, Boise State to Utah Valley, and Noah Clark, Mesa Community College. He'll be going to Arizona State, I believe. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yep.
Which of these names do you want to talk about?
I'm kind of curious to see Abby Pradere and what she can bring to Oregon State. This is an Oregon State team that just hasn't had a lot of depth, and at the very least, she provides another name. 62nd at the West Regional this last year isn't great, but I mean, it's at least a solid starting point for her when she gets to Corvallis, and if she can improve and be like end up being a top 40 name at West Regional, that's a big help to this Oregon State team, who quite frankly, hasn't historically had a lot of top 40 runners at the regional.
So the Oregon State women had the race of their lives
Mm-hmm.
at the West Regional Championships this past fall. It's going to be really hard to replicate that in
Yes.
2023. But the signs are there. According to Tiefers, everyone's back except the 20th place finisher, Christina Geisler. And even then, that was her like easily the best. Like she was the hero of the day. She saved that team. She got them to
Yes.
the national meet. According to Tiefers, she's gone. But the rest of this lineup is extremely young. A lot of them were freshmen by eligibility. And if everyone just gets incrementally a little bit better, and then you plug in someone like Pradere, I don't know, I have no idea how to say that. But if you plug her in and she's maybe top 45, she gets to the top 40, things then get interesting again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, man, I don't know if we can like really write off Oregon State. But it will heavily depend on how the rest of that back end pack rallies around her and just how much improvement they can make. it just at least keeps them in the conversation. And I also want to note that I think she's actually pretty decent in like the mile 1500.
She is.
She's 423 for 1500 meters, 446 for the mile. Nothing crazy by any means, but it's solid. And I just I think while Featherston Hall and Mitchell are going to dominate the 3K and higher, maybe nice to have someone attack that middle distance event.
Yeah, I at the very least she makes Oregon State not need quite as much of a miracle at regionals to qualify. I think she gives them a little bit more depth, a little bit more margin for error. She's going to have to be better than she was last year to really contribute, as will the rest of the lineup. But it's just another lottery ticket for that team to go into with at regionals, hoping that they come good. So I like the move. I think it's strong for both sides. And then with Oakley Olson, kind of the similar story. 1033 steeplechasers, 37th at the Mountain West Conference this past year, going to Utah Valley from Boise State. Utah Valley obviously coming out in a big way this past year. I think it's just good for them to get another piece in there, hope for some improvement, someone who's a little bit more established. I think this is just a win-win for both sides. Even if she doesn't end up providing too much for them, I think it's a worthwhile bet.
Yeah, I'm taking a look real quick at who Utah Valley returns real quick. Let me pull this up. They return. Okay, so it looks like, so they lose a heavy portion
Mm-hmm.
of their lineup according to Tiefers, which is rough. So maybe this is not like a game-changing move per se. But I think 37th in the Mountain West is like fine if you're going to move over to the WAC.
Right.
Like I think you can be like a potential scorer, like a top 20 name in the WAC, and that's pretty solid. So I think Utah Valley just recoups a little bit of scoring there. I don't know how much of a dramatic difference that's going to make, but it's nice to have. And then as for Noah Clark, 151 guy, went to Mesa Community College, Arizona State. I kind of like that. I think that's a nice move. You get to run with Dayton Carlson for a couple years. They've had a few like guys in the 800, just in and out who are pretty solid. They've developed a few great names. Vincent Mari,
Yep.
the other guy being. I kind of like it. I don't know if we really know enough about him yet, but 151 is pretty solid. And I'm trying to take a look here. Where did he finish? Yeah, so I don't know if he has actually run that at the NJCCA championships. Not since 2021, but yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I think Arizona State's a good place to, if you're a middle distance runner, to head to. I mean, they're a little bit more off the radar than some of the top teams in the middle distance, but they've proven an ability to develop guys. And I think Mari and Carlson are clear examples of that. So definitely a worthwhile shot for both sides there. But yeah, I think that's it. Anything else on any of these names?
No. I know this is a little bit shorter than usual. Got to work with us here. We are working with no results, and we probably won't have any legitimate results, until that second week of January. But we do have some fun things in the works. It's a crazy amount of work, but we will make it happen. So just keep your eyes on the site for later this week. I hope everyone had a fantastic New Year's. And Ben, that's all I got.
All right. Well, until next week, Garrett, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.